Welcome everyone to another videocast of the Schaufler Lab TU Dresden, featuring guest speaker Katrin Becker from University of Luxembourg. My name is Nelly Saibel and I'm a PhD candidate in political science and a research associate at the Schaufler Lab TU Dresden. And I will be the host of this videocast today. This videocast is part of the Schaufler Lab videocast series, which already featured talks with scholars, artists, and educators. Further information about the Schaufler Lab TU Dresden can be found on our website. And now I'm super happy to introduce our guest speaker, Katrin Becker. Katrin Becker is a senior researcher at the Department of Humanities at University of Luxembourg and a program director at the Collège International de Philosophie in Paris. Prior to that, she held positions at the Institut d'études avancées de Nantes, the Weizenbaum Institute in Berlin, and Duke University. She has published extensively in English, German, and French on blockchain, philosophy of law, and also Pierre Legendre. Her research focused on the dialectical interplay between symbolic and imaginary foundations of our culture and technological progress, with a focus on blockchain technology and generative AI. She examines the ideological foundations of blockchain and AI-driven legal and social innovations by positioning it within the broader context of Western techno-imaginaries, showing how these emerging technologies are reshaping traditional notions of law, governance, and subjectivity. Recently, she received a grant from the Volkswagen Foundation for a project with the title Protocol Studies, Making Art, Rethinking Law, and Crafting Social Relations. Quick reminder, the session will be recorded and published online on the YouTube channel of the Kunststudie, and the session is structured within 3 parts. First, Katrin will give a presentation, then we will have a moderated Q&A session, and afterwards we will stop the recording and enter an open discussion with the team of the Schaufler College. Katrin, thank you so much for joining us today. It is my pleasure to talk with you and to host this talk with you. I'm really excited because we already met a few times and touched upon some questions, but we never really managed and we never really had the time to discuss them in depth. So today is a day and I'm super excited. I invited you to this videocast not only because of your expertise on blockchain, but also your work truly resonates with the research objects of the Schaufler Lab and also discussions we had in the Schaufler Lab. In an earlier videocast, I invited crypto scholar Finn Brinton to talk about the histories of crypto money. And now I'm very much looking forward to this videocast on the legal dimension on blockchain and governance in blockchain-based environments. And on that note, I would like to hand it over to you, Katrin.
Yeah, thank you so much for the invitation. I'm really glad to be here and I'm looking forward to the discussions later on. And now I will start with my presentation. Yeah, so today I will talk about open blockchains, DAOs, so decentralized autonomous organizations, and decentralized justice. So in general, what interests me the most in blockchains is the legal and cultural aspects of it. So I don't look that much at the cryptocurrencies, but more at governmental and legal aspects that blockchains bring about. I'm guessing that most of you already know by now what a blockchain is. I just want to give a quick definition anyway. So a blockchain is basically a public, decentralized, forgery-proof, consensus-based register based on cryptography. And it is always easy to imagine it, or it's the easiest to imagine it as a book of which identical copies are stored on computers worldwide. And whenever new content is added, all copies are updated simultaneously. And there, where in a book there are pages, in a blockchain are blocks, as you can see in this drawing. So basically a block of validated and immutable information. These blocks are cryptographically linked to each other and thus create a continuous chain, and which leads to one of the core features of a blockchain being immutable and infalsifiable, because once you break one info in one block, this basically breaks the whole chain. Each information is validated and accepted through a consensus-based process, and once it is accepted in these blocks, it is transparent and visible to all. I added this website here, layers.trudy.group. That's a visualization of how a blockchain actually works, created by my colleagues at the Weizenbaum Institute, and I think it's really helpful for those who want to grasp what it looked like in detail. The main achievement or the main objective of the blockchain invention was basically to cut out the middleman. So basically to overcome the need to trust in a third party that verifies transactions between two parties in a contract and in all sorts of transactions. Because, like I said, everybody can observe and confirm any information at all times. So that makes this sort of register that a blockchain is infalsifiable and autonomous of a third party like central banks, etc. Here in the case of cryptocurrencies. I just want to make sure again that it's clear that I'm talking here about public and open blockchains, because there are different kinds of blockchains, and this is sometimes not clear enough, because there are also private or permissioned blockchains that function or that have the same features, these automation features, the cryptography features like an open blockchain, but they are controlled by a company or by a government or by basically central entities, and this undermines the whole idea of the creators of blockchain, this idea of having something open and decentralized where everybody can take part in. The open blockchains, like I said, had the purpose of replacing the central entities with decentralized processes, and the idea was that this way it would become possible to have a fairer, more democratic and automated world. So once you don't have any person sitting there verifying things anymore, but the code of the blockchain that is visible to all and that is open and unfalsifiable, there would no longer be the risk of corruption, etc., or political influence. The main or the most prominent example for the blockchain, and that was also the first blockchain, is Bitcoin. However, by now, or especially since Ethereum was created, it's still the second largest blockchain, a whole new feature came into being, namely the so-called smart contracts. And smart contracts are basically small computer programs that function according to the if-then logic. So whenever previously programmed conditions are met, specific actions are triggered. So basically, or like an idea, you can think of like an Airbnb style rental with an automatable lock to the door. So once the crypto payment arrives on the account of the person renting out the apartment, the smart lock opens and the person renting the apartment can enter. Another idea would be a self-driving car that once the payment for the rental arrives on the account of the owner, the door opens and the engine starts. So basically that way would eliminate the need for these platforms like car rental platforms or Airbnbs. The idea was now that this shouldn't only be applied for binary relations, so between the person renting the apartment and the person renting the apartment out, but that you could use those smart contracts for entire corporate or civil structures that could thus be automated. And this is basically where we get to this concept of DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations. And here I quote Wright and De Filippi, So people could band together and set rules for their own governance, collect taxes, and distribute wealth in ways the group believes is fair. Communities could form into nations, unbounded by geographical boundaries, and governed through a set of algorithmic rules that can be both established and enforced through voting mechanisms and smart contracts. What interests me here, or in general, ever since I got to know these ideas, is that here, for the first time, we're dealing with a technology that attempts to act as an institution. So before, we always had institutions, state institutions, legal institutions, etc., use technologies for their traditional purposes, but this is basically meant as an alternative to an institution. So the traditional institution, state, economy, law are replaced by a transnational and virtual algorithmic structure. There are lots of different DAOs. There are also many DAOs that weren't successful, that don't exist anymore. But here I'm naming just two DAOs, Uniswap and Maker, that have mostly an economic purpose. So they are basically decentralized finance exchange platforms trying to replace banks and using stable coins, etc. So that's still one of the most popular fields of application. However, what I'm more looking at are those examples that go into the governmental direction. So the idea of using blockchain to create new forms of society, fairer, democratic, etc. There's one example. I mean, it's not that successful anymore either. I just still want to present it in this context, which is OneHive. They also created a digital currency, but around shared values, having the idea to offer with this currency a means to steer more complex social contexts and create like it's here on the slide, creating an economic engine that can effectively and sustainably fund public goods. So this is really trying to use blockchain or cryptocurrency for social good, not only like Bitcoin, where it's mainly about gaining profit, but here these ideas are to creating new forms of society that focus on the social good. The decentralized DAO, I think everyone has heard about it. It's the idea of creating a virtual kind of country where you can connect in your real life through wearables. You can buy parts of the land. I think Snoop Dogg has one big piece of land in Decentraland. This is still, mainly about economic profit, I would think. But the whole idea, I mean, this is just to show you that it's basically an idea to create new forms of existence in the virtual realm. And this is where I think it gets clear what my interest is, or where my interest leads me in this blockchain research. So I will give you a quick overview of the next steps what I will focus on. So I will take a closer look again at what it actually means, the idea to create a decentralized autonomous organizations. What is autonomous about it? Then secondly, I will look at what has been coined as the blockchain paradox, which in my opinion is something that all blockchain projects will continuously and maybe forever, I don't know, stumble upon that, because I think that's something that that is really the core problem, and we will get into it. I will look at a few remedial approaches that have been established so far, and then I will finally look at the cultural anthropological perspective that I'm opening up to show where my critique, what my critique aims at, and why I feel that blockchain technology in that sense, in this social cultural sense, is mainly a problematic technology. So I already gave you one definition. Another definition of decentralized autonomous organizations by Kelsey Nevin is that these DAOs are meant to enable a group of people to coordinate and govern themselves, mediated by a set of self-executing rules deployed on a public blockchain. So if we look at what autonomous means in this context, it has two dimensions. On the one hand, it is meant to create a social structure that works independently of any state or other centralized structures, and thus become politically autonomous. So it's the political autonomy that they have in mind here, emancipating themselves from the traditional institutions that societies are embedded in. The second part of, or the second dimension of autonomy is refers to the fact that these structures can be automated. So by automating an immutable structure, a DAO can become autonomous from formal structures of control. So basically, once you program a blockchain, it will run and you can't stop it because it's infalsifiable. If you put like a smart contract into this blockchain, it is embedded in these blocks. There's no way of stopping the programmed stipulations. So this means that the special features or the core features of a blockchain are that it is decentralized, autonomous, it can be automated, and it is immutable. And the idea is that given all these features, which imply that there's no single entity, no single person that can interfere with political decisions or with legal decisions that have been encoded in the blockchain, it will lead to a fairer and better governance. So that there's no room for corruption or for bias anymore. That's the thought behind it. If these the programming of these stipulations are effectuated in a consensus procedure, so that it's not only one person, of course, that to have a basic democratic procedure behind programming these structures. Which leads me to the blockchain paradox, because when we think about these communities, so I will turn back to OneHive. They refer to these programmed stipulations, these automated control mechanisms in the blockchain code. They claim that if somebody says he or she represents a DAO, they are either lying or they are confused. DAOs are unique because they put automation at the center and humans at the edges. There's no CEO, no managers. Administration, where it must exist, is viewed as a design flaw and ruthlessly minimized. The fact, though, and there are empirical studies regarding this whole idea, for example, Moritz Becker, who was also a fellow at the Weizenbaum Institute, he wrote his PhD on an empirical research on DAOs, and it becomes clear every time people look at this idea of having social structures being automized, that it's just not possible, given that whenever human interactions are involved, it just cannot be programmed once and for all. You have to have a continuous governance, because humans are just not predictable in their behavior, and especially when it concerns several humans at a time. It is clear that the governmental structures need to, or the regulations need to be constantly updated due to new circumstances. And this is what Willi Ledon Birta called the blockchain paradox, because once you address the problem of governance, you no longer need blockchain. You can just as well use conventional technology that assumes a trusted central party to enforce these rules, because you're already trusting somebody or some organization or process to make the rules. So these are the two levels involved when you think about blockchain as a social regulation or governmental structure. There's on the one hand, the level of blockchain by governance by blockchain. So a group of people is being governed by the blockchain, but you also always need to take into account the level of governance of blockchain. There has to be one layer above the blockchain that takes care of of the governing of the blockchain, of adapting it to new circumstances. And this is where Ledon Virta just says, then basically you don't need a blockchain anymore if you have, again, an entity above it that can interfere or that can change the blockchain according to the changing circumstances. The blockchain community is aware of the problem, and there are lots of efforts to create this layer of to find ways to create this layer of governance in a way that it adheres to the decentralization ideals. So with regard to the political governance, there are several possibilities that are meant to solve this problem, like specific voting mechanisms, or the consensus, a consensus protocol that also applies on the governance of the blockchain level, and the idea to have, again, not an entity governing the blockchain, but fluid communities. So in a cooperative way, or in a basic democratic way, that whenever people are involved, they have a share, or they have a say in how to govern and how to adapt the blockchain if needed. Yeah. So again, the example at the One Hive DAO, as an open community, anyone can join One Hive and participate. The barriers to entry are extremely low. Just show up and start contributing. So yeah, the idea is to, again, have a decentralized and democratic way of handling the layer of governance of the blockchain. But then there are a few templates for political governance that have been developed to be at hand for those who are trying to build up a DAO for social and community services. And then the same movement, or the same scenario can be observed in the legal part of those DAOs, because of course it's not only a political question of what to do when a blockchain governing or steering a community touches upon problems or on new situations that haven't been foreseen. The same applies for law, given that a smart contract or governmental structures in the blockchain can lead to unfair or unjust situations. And then again, there's the question of how to deal with it without breaking the core ideas, like not having a third party deciding about anything, not having one central entity, but always sticking to the ideal of decentralization. And this is where the idea of decentralized dispute resolutions comes in, or decentralized justice. And there are a few platforms that try to offer this sort of decentralized justice. I'm focusing here on Kleos, which is the decentralized justice platform that goes the furthest, and in establishing these sorts of dispute resolution mechanisms, and that also has a whole philosophy in their background. I think the head, Federico Ast, the CEO or the creator rather of Kleros, has studied philosophy himself, so they have come up with a whole philosophical construct to show why this will actually lead to a fairer and more just justice than the current or the traditional state juridical system. How does the decentralized justice platform work exactly? The idea is that conflicting circumstances in a smart contract will automatically trigger a referral to the Kleros court. Kleros leverages crowdsourcing, blockchain, and game theory to develop a justice system that produces true decisions in a secure and inexpensive way. So that basically means that legal conflicts are treated, or let me start again. So basically, when a conflict or in a smart contract, you already have the stipulation that when a conflict arises, the smart contract will be put on hold and the Kleros will be called, and the certain jurors that are basically sitting around the world will be contacted they will receive the data that they have to decide upon on, and then have to come to a decision without deliberation, without talking to each other. So it's a completely anonymous procedure. And the crypto economic and game theory principles that are here in play refer to the fact that you can make money by being a juror. So you have to put a stake in that gets doubled when you find the right decision. And the right decision is the decision that all the other jurors pick too. So it's basically, if we all agree without knowing each other, just by looking at the plain facts of the case, if we all agree on the same decision, we all win. We double our stake. And the game theory principles that are involved here is that game theory basically looks at how people who don't know each other, who don't talk to each other, can come to the same result, thinking about something. And the idea is to find points, and the two Schelling points, they are called Schelling points. The two Schelling points here are fairness and honesty. And the idea is then to have the people think about what the others think, what the others think is fair and honest in this case they have at hand. This way, the idea is to get rid of the need for a judge, for a central entity deciding on a case, but you have different people without any specific legal background, but just lay people who get involved and who look at the case, who bring in their own understanding of justice, and producing something that, according to Kleros, is more pure kind of justice, because it's you don't have the bias of a juror, of the judge. You don't have you don't have the bias resulting from seeing the people in front of court, etc. And you have the autonomy and decentralization kept alive. That are the core features and the core achievements of the blockchain. And given that you can involve anybody around the world, at least that's the ideal, you will actually come up with a new form of justice that goes beyond everything that a traditional judicial system can provide. If we look at it more critically, which I urge to do, is that already the idea of putting money into the system of justice is a highly problematic fact. So the idea of saying if you find the right decision, the just decision, you will make money, leads to a conflation of economics and justice. So, and they are openly advertising their system with the fact that you can make money. So the incentive to find a just system or a just result or of a legal conflict is financial, which already, I think, undermines the idea of having a purely or a pure idea of justice. Again, it is like, I think, lots of parts of the blockchain universe is we have a neoliberal and capitalist approach to justice. And of course, in my opinion, it is highly problematic when the majority decision is that what is conceived of as justice. The other part is that, of course, and that's also something that is very often pushed out of the conscience of everybody involved, that all these systems, also, as well, especially now here, the algorithm that selects the jurors to take part is something that needs to be programmed. So there always this belief that everything becomes fairer and more just and more democratic when there's no bias, when there's no human dimension involved anymore. But when an algorithm steers everything, leaves out the fact that these algorithms need to be programmed by humans with their biases and with their specific ideas. So just to give you an example, my colleague Jean Laseg in Paris and me have worked on Kleros for quite a while, and we wanted to just try and see what it is like to be to work as a juror. And I staked €50. My colleague asked his institution to get a bit more money, and they gave him €500, and we never got picked. So this basically shows already that you have to have a certain financial background to take part in this system, and the whole idea of having something neutral, decentralized, where everybody can get involved is not as true as it sounds on their website. The other thing, of course, is that you have to have a certain technological background too. So, and that leads to seeing that that we're dealing not with with an unbiased, neutral, pure form of jury, when those who can take part do have to have a certain economic background and a technological background. That basically means that it's specific people that that make the decisions concerning conflicts that arise in smart contracts. And this is, I'm already basically in my philosophical assessment or cultural theoretical assessment of where I see the problems in the blockchain context. And this leads me now to my fourth and last part of my presentation, where I want to focus on the body in the large sense of the word, saying that this whole idea of decentralizing law and society and politics implies the idea of disembodiment, which, in my opinion, is the core problem and the core or the main stumble stone upon which blockchain projects will stumble and again, trying to create something democratic and justice-based. So this is where I need to get a bit into my works on le genre. I don't need to explain his theory in detail. I just want to here show to what extent I think the body is one of the core aspects of systems of the rule of law and of democracy. So the legal subject is defined in certain legal theories, such as by Alain Suppiot, etc., is defined as the body and mind. So a subject always implies these two dimensions, the body and the mind, and they once you are born into the institutional system. You are born with certain rights already before birth. You are bestowed with certain rights. Once you're born, you have certain rights and certain obligations. So you are part of the institutional system that is established by the corpus of law and the body politic. And as the subject in body and mind, you are part of the corpus of law with regard to the laws and obligations you have as the citizen, as the subject of the legal system, and you are part of the body politic. You have voting rights. You are part of the society. You bring in your both your mind and your body into the society, the group that comes up with a certain idea of the world that is fixed into or that is represented by the politicians of the current or changing government. And both the law and the body politic, so basically the institutional system, fixes or puts down in writing and in rules, etc., a certain vision of the world, certain ideas, values, and imaginaries that are very often hardening into ideologies, and that create basically the fundament of the legitimacy of the institutional system. So that's now Legendre's theory. He basically says that an institutional system needs to stage the legitimacy through aesthetic means for the subject to believe in its legitimacy, and for the subject to recognize itself as a part of this represented system. So that's basically the three layers of the concept of representation. That to feel represented by the system that you are part of, it needs to be represented in visible objects, in aesthetic procedures, in rituals, etc., to which then embody, that's maybe of the French kind of the French use of the word representation. Représentation is also that what you think of, the visions, the values. So the unseen that is then represented in aesthetics for the subjects to feel represented. That's maybe. Yeah, maybe we can discuss the details of that. I don't see your faces, so I don't know if you understand what I'm saying right now. Anyway, it is on three levels that the body plays a core part, and I mean body in really in the large sense. So the body of the subject, the actual human body, the body of law as the corpus of law, the textual body of the society, the body politic as the society that is made out of humans being in a certain territorial in a certain territorial area together, and the corpus of ideology, so the aesthetics, books, rituals, etc., that are forming the fundament, the fundament of legitimacy of the institutional system within which the body is embedded and also a constitutive part of it. All these 4 bodies that I'm referring to here are now basically meant to be replaced by a fluid decentralized blockchain structure. So when these blockchain projects think about creating a virtual system, Nelly, can I just ask, I'm seeing that it's 10 to 11 already. Am I getting too long? Shall I shorten it?
I think it's okay if you just take, let's say, a few minutes to finish the presentation, but you still have some time, so don't worry. That's fine.
Okay. Okay, thanks. Yeah, so the subject, the idea to create a world, a society, a blockchain society in the virtual realm basically leads to the idea of having a subject living with others in the virtual system, creating a law that can be that is based on blockchain structures in the virtual without having actual courts or procedures or judges applying the law, but it's more about having something that has been programmed and that is being applied automatically. And the same applies for politics. The ideologies and the values and the visions are programmed into the blockchain code from the beginning and don't need to be re-staged or re-represented. I will now quickly go through the facts again to show why I think that the body plays a core role in justice, law, and politics. So here I quote Levinas, who says that the ethical responsibility is the response to the injunction, the interpellation of the other's face, and humaneness is conceived entangled in the other's face. So he refers to the actual need to be in the presence of the other to create something as justice, such as justice. And Simone Weil says the aspiration to solidarity presupposes a certain thickness of the terrain. So she also says that it's in that we need to be in the world, that we need to be together to create the feeling of justice, which is a feeling that basically is a physical feeling that cannot be created in the virtual without being together. So the idea is then, will changing members of fluid communities who only meet virtually be able to establish value principles that members identify with and that serve as orientation for politics and law? The same applies to the body politic. Jacques Rancière insists on the fact that the essence of politics is the demonstration of dissent. And it is basically only because we are forced to share the space and time with people that are in our neighborhood, that we share the territory with, that something like policy, the political, can emerge, given that we need to agree on something through discussions, through dissent. Cloud communities are basically the opposite of exactly that. Srinivasan, who had the idea of creating the movement of the network state, says, what if like-minded people around the world choose to freely form new societies and create governments using Web3 technology to ensure a transparent, auditable, shareable, participatory authority? So here we see that the homogeneity between people that are ideologically and socioculturally on the same page is an actual aim of these cloud communities, and that basically undermines the whole idea of the political. And last but not least, Pierre Legendre reminds us that law injects the limit, and here it's easier with the German word Grenze to understand what he means. Law injects the Grenze into social circuits. So the Grenze, the limit being what is allowed to be done, what you must or must not do, and that's directly connected to the Grenze, to the borders of a jurisdiction, because a law can only be enforced when it is clear who is subject to this law. So the question, I mean, in blockchain context now, the idea is that the individual adaptation of applicable norms would enable individuals to determine the rules that apply to them according to their respective preferences and to switch between rule sets depending on time and circumstances. So that leads to the idea how you can enforce law when the body can withdraw from these virtual legal systems at any time. If there's not the connection anymore between the limit and the border, how can you make sure that a law is actually applied? And Srinivasan, that I just whom I just mentioned very quickly, that's a whole other topic, basically thinks about robo dogs, etc., to apply the law in once these virtual communities become reinstated in the physical realm by crowdfunding territory and placing people back to territorial communities. And this is the last point, that this regarding the subject, that we're here basically having to do with a completely new concept of subjectivity, as the legal subject, as I said at the beginning, is defined as a union of body and mind. And here, now with the Internet of Things, that is basically pushing the virtual legal realm into the physical realm. So once you have objects that belong to a blockchain legal system function in the non-blockchain legal world, you basically can imagine that me not being part of a virtual society or virtual DAO is confronted with an object that belongs to a different jurisdiction. So the rule of law concept of the legal subjectivity as a unity of body and mind that protects the body from being treated as a commodified object basically leads to the complete exclusion of the non-programmable body. Neither I don't have the chance to be physical part of the virtual system, sitting here having my virtual subjectivity maybe take part in the virtual realm, but on the one hand, there are already incidents that shows that if my avatar or if my dimension in the online world is affected by something illegal, that I am still affected emotionally by it, and there's no, or even physically by it, and there's no legal. There are no legal redress possibilities so far. On the other hand, like I said, it's possible that the virtual world reaches out into the physical, belonging to a different jurisdiction. Let me go back here. So the idea of automated doors that are prevented from opening for people whom a smart contract risk assessment service rates below a threshold of desirability, or in the very negative or pessimistic dystopian version, smart contracts could be tied to an internet-connected gun, which could only be operated if these preconditions were met. So this basically shows that here we are dealing with two different jurisdictions: the traditional jurisdiction of the physical world and the jurisdiction of the virtual world, that has so far not been able to be regulated through laws, and would basically also lose the whole idea of blockchain if it would be regulated. I think I will skip the last part. The main conclusion that I want to make is that that the body is the core element of democracy and the rule of law, and blockchain technology is mainly about disembodiment, and therefore does not, in the current state, doesn't make it possible to think of something as democracy and justice in the virtual realm. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Katrin, for this rich and inspiring talk. And thank you so much for this technical or for this introduction into technical aspects and for sharing your thoughts. It was really inspiring. And I'm glad that I've prepared several questions because sometimes you meet people with resonating research interest and there is so much to talk, but you don't know where to start. So my questions revolve around the topics law, nature, religion, justice, and artistic practices. So I will start with the first question, because in your talk you emphasize this legal dimension of governance, legal dimension of blockchain technologies. And in your paper, Blockchain Matters, you also argue that the blockchain technology inaugurates this new concept of law, turning blockchain into a subject for legal philosophy. And it's super interesting because I think when people hear the word blockchain, they would usually think of political economy and cryptocurrencies. Could you please tell us again, why do we need to engage with legal philosophy? Why do we need to ask questions on the perspective of cultural theory and legal philosophy? And what are the limits of legal and economic analysis in the context of blockchain? And what is the role of critique in this analysis? Yeah.
Yeah, I think what I tried to make clear in my talk already is that blockchain, and I think also AI and all these algorithmic technologies create a whole new concept of what law actually is, and they eliminate the importance or significance of concepts such as interpretation of what is Ermessen now, the Ermessensspielraum in law. Legal tech and blockchain basically have the idea of using all data there is, or using code to make law something more controllable, more just, because it eliminates the human bias and the insecurities around it, thinking that if law is applied in a completely equal way and in a quasi as if then kind of structure, that this leads to a more just system. The thing is, what is not seen is that these insecurities are basically the core of what justice is. So it's never, one case can never be applied in the same way to two different situations, because it is always about the human being that brings in different aspects of their life, different backgrounds, different settings that need to be taken into account. And this also leads to the fact that law is never something completely stable, because every case has an impact back onto the law. So when a case is being decided, this shapes the law in itself. And I think this is the core principle of democracy and the rule of law, that it is not something mechanic, but that everybody has a part in it, an active part, and constitutive part in law and democracy.
Thank you. Super interesting. And I have one follow-up question on this legal dimension and also on this legal subjectivity, because in your paper you also argue that the blockchain initiates this profound displacement of the symbolic and imaginary basis of law, leading to the emancipation of the body. And you were also talking about this emancipation of the body and the disembodiment in your talk. And it's also my observation that in discourses on blockchain, or discourses on blockchain quite often refer to the body, like in general, for instance, also in discourses on transhumanism and Satoshi Nakamoto's identity. And this, I don't know why, or for some reasons, it's always about a body in these discourses on blockchain. So on the one hand, we can observe this disembodiment and the conceptual dematerialization of legal subjectivity. And on the other hand, blockchain relies on extractive and physical material infrastructures. Could you maybe share some thoughts on the relationship between blockchain-based legal subjectivity and the materiality of blockchain technology? And would you say that this disembodiment of blockchain-based subjectivity affect all individuals equally?
Yeah, I'm wondering what you mean with the body being in the focus of blockchain people. I mean, if I think about transhumanism, it is the body, of course, plays a big role, but only in the sense of overcoming it or enhancing it through technology.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think what can be seen in all these technology or these hyped technologies is that the body is usually seen as something that we need to enhance through technique, or if possible, leave behind to become a better human. Yeah, I think this question is really important for general technological progress, because we constantly observe this illusion of being able to leave the body behind to create something virtual like the metaverse, etc., or AI being a non-physical entity in the cloud, or already all this terminology that is being used suggests that there's no physical, no bodily dimension to this, which is highly problematic, given that there are not only ecological resources being exploited, but also lots of human beings that are working on making these technologies work. With regards to the resources that you mentioned, I think blockchain has been, or these blockchain projects have been working on minimizing the energy problem by switching to a new consensus procedure from proof of work to proof of stake, which doesn't need so many computers anymore to take part and to use that much energy, which I think is now more a topic with regard to AI. Can you remind me of the last question with the blockchain-based legal subjectivity?
Does the disembodiment of blockchain-based subjectivity affect all individuals equally?
I mean, first of all, I think there is no actual disembodiment, so it is an illusion in the sense, and it's basically I think the problem that I mentioned, this idea of being confronted with Internet of Things objects that are connected to another virtual jurisdiction by a DAO, that is something that can affect us all equally. At one point, I mean, I just read an article yesterday about these robots in China that are in Shenzhen walking around, and I think I'm in a research group on AI and robots. I think with more and more robots, that can become an issue that then affects everybody. To be honest, I don't see that blockchain is such a huge risk at the moment, because the DAOs and etc. have been not that successful. I think the network state movement is something that is growing in momentum, and there are lots of communities, but so far it's not something that is an imminent risk, I would say.
Okay. I would like to move to another topic and another paper of yours with the German title Göttliche Protokolle, Bitcoin-Jünger and Schattenhafte Herrscher. This paper is on the religious aspirations of blockchain technology. What is the function of religious discourse elements in blockchain, and maybe also in general in discourses on emerging digital technologies? Can we maybe draw a line between this disembodiment of legal subjectivity and religious discourse elements?
I think, technology and religious terminology goes very often hand in hand, because technology is always about, and here I quote Pierre Musso, is always about functionality and fictionality. So every technology comes with a whole vision of a new world, or not only to sell, to make it sell, but also because it is always based on certain visions of the world. So the interesting thing with blockchain technology is that so let me go one step back. So Legendre and Pierre Musso basically show in this image that I showed on my presentation, they show that every culture, every society basically is based on a certain belief system. This is what I meant with vision, ideologies, and ideas, etc. And so every culture speaks in the name of a certain entity that it believes to be the founder or the legitimizing entity for law. So in the name of God, in the name of the state, in the name of the people, there's always a certain belief system at the bottom of every culture, every cultural system. And according to Legendre and Pierre Musso, this belief system has ever since the industrial religion been replaced by technology, economy, and science. And the interesting thing with blockchain now is that blockchain basically moves from the role of this entity in the name of technological progress into the institutional system. So it's not only the belief system anymore. Blockchain was called truth machine, etc. So there are really big terms used to advertise it or to promise something, a utopian future, but it's at the same time meant to work as the institution. So it's not anymore the state using a technology in the name of technological progress, but the blockchain is in itself the God. I mean, they call the first block of the Bitcoin blockchain was called the Genesis block. They talk, Vitalik Buterin says at one point, talks about the God protocols, that it's the one neutral God and unbiased God that takes in data without messing in it and puts it out as it is. And that it's basically untouchable, untouched, and completely pure. And in that sense, it is quite interesting because they say that they are overcoming all this need for belief or for the uncertainty of humaneness, and at the same time they recreate something much more religiously charged with these blockchain ideas.
Mhm. Super interesting. I think we are running out of time. I would like to move to the last question because recently, as I've already mentioned in the introduction, you received a grant from the Volkswagen Foundation. Again, congratulations. The Schaufler Lab has an artist in residence program, and we're always super interested in artistic practices and artistic research. Could you maybe tell us a little bit more about your new project? And what would you say, what is the maybe potential also for artistic research in the context of blockchain?
Yeah, I mean, in the project, we are looking at Web3 artistic projects that play around with this feature of using decentralized mechanisms to govern societal structures. And there's lots going on, much more than in the actual political area. And we believe that, yeah, artists have the freedom to play around with these ideas and possibly creating something new. And there again, if we think of this image that I showed on my presentation, aesthetics is a huge part in making law seem legitimate, and this can basically be turned around in a way that's saying if you create something through art, then this might create a power that can be used for new legal aspects. We, in our project, which is called Protocol Studies, we're mainly looking at protocols, putting them into the focus as a new media with legal effects and with an aesthetic or artistic potential, and with legal implications. And so far we haven't chosen. We have 3 or 4 projects that we have in mind, and we will work with these artists together and also try and have them create something new, more in regard to political governmental mechanisms. But one of these projects is Terra Zero. That's a Berlin artist collective that is basically working at the interface of ecology, economy, and blockchain. And they basically had the idea of a forest that is owning itself, and that crowd funds the money to take care of itself. So that's one of the projects. The other one is the Earthist Network, that is also has also this ecological dimension, where they are trying to put the Landwirtschaft into decentralized hands, to have different people work on one project, carbon credits, etc. And yeah, it always has a artistic part. If you look at the websites, it's quite interesting, but it also has a real world effect if this was successful and be realized in a larger scale, on a larger scale.
All right. Again, thank you so much for your presentation and for this talk, Katrin. Again, I think we're running out of time, so I suggest we stop here. Thank you so much for this inspiring and rich presentation. And I can think, or I think I can speak on the behalf of the whole Schaufler Lab, that we really appreciate your time and this talk with you. Thank you so much, Katrin.
Thank
and
you.
I suggest we stop here with the recorded session.